Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody had a good lunch, and thank you for coming this afternoon. I'm really honored to be one of the top candidates here and vying for the honor to lead this wonderful organization into the future. My name is Paula Houston. I am currently the Executive Director of the Meredith Matthews East Madison YMCA. I've been there for almost 8 years. My background is in public health and community health. I have a master's degree in health administration from the School of Public Health, the University of Washington. I started working at the public health department, Seattle and Clinton County, when I was in school. Stayed there for about 7 years doing various things, from starting out working in maternal child health services, moved on to the Division of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services, where I ended up being the interim manager there. Moved from there to being a district administrator in the central area with what they call their Special Health Services Center. I had several different programs under my supervision. The Moms Project that did outreach and case management for drug-addicted new moms. I had a group of child care nurses that did health and safety for in-home child care centers. I had the Northwest Family Center, which served HIV-positive women and families. And then my first introduction to working with seniors was in that. My first introduction to working with seniors was in that area as well. That was the African American Elders Project, was also under me. I left the health department, did my own business for about 2 years. I had my own fitness center. It was up north, so I did personal training, I had yoga classes, and so did that for a couple of years, and then came back into community health, where I was the manager at Carolyn Downs Family Medical Center over in the central area on Yesler. Had a wonderful opportunity to work with a lot of seniors there, saw some of the complexities that seniors have, particularly in their healthcare needs, when those are coupled also with being low income, which a lot of our patients were there. And then the position at the YMCA came open, and I thought that would be a great next step for me in my my career in the health and wellness world, is to look at things from a prevention side. So help the community to stay healthy and not end up in services such as the health department has, or in the community health centers. So that's where I've been, and it's been a great ride there. I was able to turn around a branch that had been pretty much in a deficit situation financially for historically, I would say. Until I got there, people actually couldn't tell me how long it had been since it had actually turned a profit. But one of the things that happened is that it did not remain relevant with the community that it was serving. The community changed a lot, and the branch didn't. So I came in, was able to get the facility, some facility upgrades, changed some staffing, changed the expectations, brought it back to, sort of long story short, it is now, we're running over $100,000 surplus, and then have done that for the last couple of years. So really thriving. We've doubled our membership, doubled the amount of money we're raising, doubled the number of volunteers that we're serving. So really become an integral part of the community. So really proud of that. And that brings me here, ready for a new challenge, and ready to be CEO of a wonderful organization like this. And what I was going to talk about today, of course, is like many nonprofits, this nonprofit is in an environment that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So I was asked to talk a little bit about how would I go about sustaining an organization in the future, given those realities that we live in. So when I first heard that, I thought, wow, that would be really tough. Those are scary words. Those are really scary words. And then I thought, well, I think really that might be a trick question, because you really can't sustain an organization if you're going to focus on the very things that are going to challenge it and the obstacles that are going to be in front of it. So those three things: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, they're realities, but my way of leading wouldn't be to focus on those. What I would focus on are three things. The first one being the vision. You have to have a strong vision. You need to know where the organization needs to go and how it's going to get there. And I don't mean just the vision statement. I mean, you're going to focus on what do we actually want to be? What do we want to be to ourselves? What do we want to be to our community? The second area of focus is on what are the strategies that are going to get us to realize that vision, or the how. How are we going to get there? The third thing to get us to realize that vision is the who. Who are we going to partner with? Who are we going to have as our employees? Who are we going to have as our volunteers? Basically, who's going to do the work that's going to get us to realize that vision? So while we're going to certainly acknowledge and respect that we're in this environment that's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, we're not going to focus on that, because that's not what's going to build a strong organization and move us into the future. So how will I do that? Well, I'm going to propose that we use a structure that's called appreciative inquiry. Some of you may have heard of that. It is a way that looks at the assets and the talents and the skills that are already in an organization to help us to move that forward. So it kind of flips conventional problem solving on its head. So we're not going to focus on that's a problem. I'm going to focus on that to try to fix it. I'm going to look at who's already here, what talents and skills do they bring, and we're going to use those to move us forward and to build a strong organization. I don't like to quote a lot of famous people, but one thing that has stuck in my mind is something that President Bill Clinton said, and he said there's nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed with what's right with America. And I kept that in the back of my mind, and I thought, that's just good leadership in an organization. You're going to use what's there. You're not going to focus on the negative to try to fix something, because you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So I learned about appreciative inquiry when I was in school. I'm currently in the doctoral program in educational leadership at Stanford University, and this is one of the many leadership structures that we talked about. But this is one that stuck with me because it makes a lot of sense. It's fairly easy to implement. People understand it, and you can get things moving pretty quickly with it. So as defined by those who developed it, a group of researchers at Case Western University, appreciative inquiry uses the talents and strengths of the people in the organization to ensure the continued life and the relevancy in the world around them. The life and the relevancy of the organization in the world around them. And in this case, for this nonprofit, we're in a world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So what makes it those things? Well, our funding streams, all of the above, all the time. Our communities are continuously changing, so they become more complex. They become more ambiguous with new immigrants. We have mixed income neighborhoods. We have unconventional housing. I just recently learned about something they call micro housing. These are these little teeny tiny 250 square feet homes. People that are living in those, and I imagine a lot of seniors are going to end up in those sort of homes. What are the services that they need? That's something new. Sort of something old, something new. It kind of reminds me of when some of our grandparents probably grew up in places that had rooming houses. It has new opportunities for us, something we're not used, but makes it complex and ambiguous. We have our services then become uncertain because what used to work may not work anymore, and we haven't figured out why. Well, that was working for 10 years, but it stopped working because all these other things have changed. So this model of appreciative inquiry is going to focus on the people, because that's the strength of any organization, is the people. So it's going to focus on the who of those priorities I mentioned. So here what happens is we eliminate the futile task of trying to motivate people by highlighting their weaknesses and shortcomings, by highlighting the shortcomings of the organization, by using criticism and negative reinforcement. With this model, we're going to breathe new life into an organization by encouraging and advancing creativity, dreaming, insight, achievement, and assets of all the people who are there. So, if I were to undertake this model here at Senior Services, there's something called the 4D cycle that would be used. The first D starts with means discovery, and in that phase of it, you appreciate the gifts and talents that each person brings. So we elicit those. Second D stands for dreaming. That's where we have staff envision results. What would the ideal Senior Services organization look like? The third D is design. Bring people together. Co-construct what that new organization is going to look like. How are we going to build it? And the fourth D is destiny. How are we going to sustain it? Now that it's built, how are we going to keep it strong? How are we going to keep it relevant? In this plan, we begin with our senior leaders interviewing each other. Then we go down the next level, then the next level, then the next level, till we get to that very first frontline person. There are a set of interview questions that would happen there. We ask each other questions such as, what's one highlight of your experience in this organization? A time when you felt most engaged in your work. That gets people thinking about, well, what am I bringing to the table? Why did I come here? What's keeping me happy? Second question might be, what do you value most about yourself and your work in this organization? Again, focusing on the assets that each person brings. Third question, what are the essential factors that give life to your program or your center, and without which it wouldn't exist? So now thinking what you're doing, what your talents have brought that have built your particular center or your program. The fourth, but that's that destiny. Now you're going to envision that it's, say, the year 2020 now. You're still a part of Senior Services. You look around. What do you notice that's different, new, better, more successful? So that part of the cycle, that's the discovery phase, that interview process. The dream phase, staff will be asked two questions. What do you want to be? And what do you want this organization to be? The design phase is where we'll use staff vision to focus on their ideal job and the ideal organization in which they're going to be working. And lastly, the destiny phase is staff will be asked, what do you need to create that vision? What do you need to sustain it? What do you need to keep it relevant? So that's how I would go about looking at volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So now one thing that's really critical to the success of any change and sustainability effort is being intentional about the type of environment and the type of culture that's created in an organization. For me, that type of an environment is one where everybody does their part. And that's an acronym I made up. It's the only acronym I'm going to use, I promise. And it's P-A-R-R-T-T. The first P stands for performance. We want to be a high-performing organization. We want to make sure that that's the expectation and that everybody's living up to that. The A is accountability. We're going to be accountable to ourselves. We're going to be accountable to our constituents and all of our stakeholders. The first R is for respect. We're going to have a respectful organization with each other, with our constituents, with our participants, with our clients. The second R is relevant. We have to make sure that we remain relevant in our communities. So as the communities change, we need to be prepared to change what we're doing, how we're doing it, to stay relevant with those communities. The first T is about trust. We need to have an environment where we can trust each other and our communities have trust in us. And the last T is transparency. We want to make sure that we're being transparent with each other and what we're doing, and that what we're doing and why we're doing it is transparent to our communities and our constituents and our stakeholders. So now I've told you a little bit about how I might initially go about leading an effort to sustain the organization in the future. You want to probably know, well, so what are you bringing to the table that's going to make this happen? So going back to the beginning, one of the things that I believe I am good at, and I've actually been told I'm good at, is that I have a high capacity for dealing with uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. I've had to deal with that. When you're dealing with people, you're dealing with that all the time. When you're dealing in a nonprofit with the external forces, you're dealing with that all the time. Externally, there's also volatility in funding streams, in government grants, in communities that have construction going on and people are being displaced and things like that. One thing I won't tolerate is volatility in a workplace. That's why I create that workplace where everybody does their part. Having a volatile workplace, not a place I want to work. Probably not a place any of you want to work either. So I want to create an environment where that is not in the workplace. Can't do anything about it being external. We'll deal with that. But volatility in a workplace, not healthy. And we want to make sure we're a healthy, vibrant organization where people want to stay. So, one of the other things I bring is that I believe I'm a systems thinker. I can look at big picture, small picture, lots of different disparate pieces of information and bring them all together and figure out how they're going to affect the situation, affect the organization in a pretty effective way. I've been told I do that. I believe I can do that really well, and I think that's something that here at Senior Services you're going to need. I'm really an effective coach, and staff development is one of the things I really enjoy. I was asked upstairs, one of my favorite things to do in my job, and really staff development is one of those things. I believe one of the marks of a good leader is to be able to develop other leaders, and I really enjoy being able to do that. I like talking to people from frontline staff to the most senior leader. I think I've done a really good job if I can get other leaders to move on to their next thing. Hopefully it's within the organization, but if it's their next thing, moves them up, gives them a professional development opportunity, fulfills them personally, and it's out of the organization, I still feel like I've done a good job. And finally, I'm a connector. I really enjoy finding out who's doing what, who needs what, connecting them to make services better, to make the community better. And I'm actually well connected in the community too. I know a lot of people. A lot of people know me. I think that's something that's a strength certainly that I bring to the organization as well. So now people usually want to know about my leadership style. First and foremost, I tell people that my leadership style is grounded in integrity. The quick story of how this played out for me at the health department, I told in our little teeny circle that we had during lunch, but I'll retell it for those of you who weren't there. I was in the Division of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services, and I was the second in command. At the time, within about a 2-month period of time, my manager had been removed involuntarily from the position, and I discovered and dealt with a female staff, one of my senior program analysts, who was sexually harassing male staff. Got rid of her in 5 days, probably the fastest firing in a government agency ever. If you've ever worked in a government agency, it takes a really long time to remove somebody who is no longer an asset to the organization. So as you can imagine, staff were in kind of turmoil. They were hurting. And I had to figure out, okay, I need people to still be productive, but people also need time to heal. So that was a lot of change at one time. I'm in here, they don't actually know me, so I need to give them time to get to know me, to see that I believe in them, that I'm here to support them. At the same time, I'm here to support the organization, but they're my first. So I did a lot of management by walking around, talking to people, getting to know me, letting them get to know me, getting them to get to trust me. And I remember very clearly there was one time when we finally pulled everybody together in a meeting, and I could feel sort of the air was getting a little lighter. And finally one staff person, a young woman who I thought absolutely just hated me. I mean, I would talk to her and she'd roll her eyes, and I couldn't figure out how I was ever going to break through this woman. And so she started off the meeting and she says, well, we decided we actually trust you. And I was like, thank you, I think. And she says, yeah, you are who you say you are, and you did what you said you were going to do. And I said, well, thank you. And then the air just went. The next day, one of my senior program analysts came in, who actually now works at the Y. We sort of followed each other around. And she gave me a stone that had engraved on it the word integrity. And I've kept that. And that for me was really when I transitioned from a manager to a leader, realizing that a manager manages things and systems and money and transactions. And I really transformed into a leader where I could be a transformational leader, wherein I'm focusing on the people. The next step of that would be to become a transcendent leader, and I think we're all working to that. But truly transcendent leaders in the world of leadership are people like Gandhi and Jesus and Mother Teresa. I might throw Nelson Mandela in that role. So I think we all aspire to be there, but I certainly am not going to stand here and tell you that. So from that's where I kind of got the name of my leadership style, and that's adaptive intuitive. So I believe I'm good at reading people and eliciting information, finding out what it is they need, and I adapt my leadership style to that. And it can change from time to time. But I also know that as long as I stand in integrity in what I'm doing and in how I'm leading, then things are going to turn out the way they're supposed to and turn out right, both for me, for the person, and for the organization. So that's kind of what I'm going to bring to the organization. So the next thing I was asked, so what kind of innovative ideas might I bring? So what I've learned today and from doing my research is you guys are doing a lot of really cool stuff here. Really, already really, really wonderful things. I know you're looking at a lot of revenue generating, new revenue generating opportunities. I know you've got a couple of different task forces that are working on that. And that's a great thing. So to really do justice to answering that question, I'd want to know what those task forces are doing, what they're looking at. I'd also want to know more in depth currently what the programs and services are. What are some of the opportunities for those? Sometimes there might be some things we need to stop doing. Then I would want to look at our stakeholders, find out what their needs are, certainly do some community assessment, find out what the needs are of the different communities that the center serves, that we serve here, out of the administrative offices. Then I pull a group of people together and then look at where are those gaps. Figure out what the gaps are, and try to decide if we are the best place or the best organization to fill those gaps. Sometimes we might be, sometimes we won't be. One of the things that a lot of service organizations, particularly in human services, need to be cognizant of is trying to fill a need with a service where there's no need or the community doesn't want you. And we've tried to do that at the Y, and well, you just can't understand why people want to come to this program. Well, they don't want that program. So stop doing it. And we stopped doing things like that. And you don't want to force a program on it. And you don't want to start providing a service, and you're not really the best person to provide it. Oftentimes there's a community partner out there that their main focus might be that one thing that you're trying to do. Well, let's support them in doing that, and we can use our energy doing something else that we do well. Again, a lot of nonprofits do that. We've certainly done that at the Y. And usually it doesn't turn out well, and we've used a lot of resources that could have been allotted elsewhere. So now, all of that being said, I do see that there are a couple of opportunities. One certainly is in the expansion of partnerships. When I had my first interview here, I was asked, was there any opportunity that I saw for senior services to partner with the Y? And absolutely, there is. Certainly in the health and well-being fitness arena, that's kind of a natural one. But one of the things that you might not know that the Y does is that we have chronic disease prevention programs. We have a diabetes prevention program. We have Parkinson's support. We have a program called Live Strong at the Y that is for cancer survivors. And those are certainly programs that I would love to open up to have either run out of our senior centers or make available to more of our seniors in some kind of way. But running them out of the centers would be ideal. There's also a program for obese children who have been designated as medically obese and their families, and that's called the ACT program. It's called Actively Changing Together. And that is something that also could be run out of senior centers. And that brought another thought to mind, is the expansion of the concept of a kinship center, which I know the Central Area Senior Center has, and I believe it's one of the only ones around. And I know they do great work there, but that seems to be a natural place where this organization could expand and have that program in all centers. And that came to mind for me because I was talking with one of my program directors who leads one of our programs out in our schools, and we were kind of seeing a drop-off in participation in this program. We were trying to kind of figure out why. And she brought up one young man who had been a leader in the program and was coming all the time, and these are middle schoolers. And it turns out that this young man lives with his great-grandmother and now no longer has transportation to get to the program and has to be home to take care of his grandmother. And I thought, so what kind of support is this great-grandmother getting trying to raise a 14-year-old? I was like, I can raise a 14-year-old right now. And so somebody, I'm assuming she's quite a bit older than I am. So why not make that available to more people out in our communities? So those are two areas that I thought definitely there was some opportunity. But really to get into it, I want to do those other things first. Really do some good digging into what we're doing, partnerships, making an assessment, and kind of doing a gap analysis to find out what needs to be out there. So lastly, I was asked to talk about my passion about this organization and its mission. So that's really easy. Really, really easy. Anybody here getting any younger? No? Nobody's got like a painting in a closet that's aging for you. Anybody get that? Yeah. Okay, Dorian Gray. I wasn't sure if it was Dorian Gray reference or not. If anybody, you could rent it on it's a guy that continues to get younger, and he's got a painting in the closet that ages for him. So yeah, me either. I'm not getting any younger, and I'm part of the baby boomer generation. I just kind of slid in under the wire, but I'm proud to be here, and I'm proud to say I'm healthy and I'm strong and I'm vibrant and I've got support that I need, and I want to stay that way. So part of my reason for wanting to become a part of this wonderful organization is kind of selfish. I want to make sure that there's services that are out there for me as I continue to age. I know that already Joanne has her wonderful program for baby boomers that's already up and running, and I want to be a part of continuing to make sure that those programs stay in place so that I have them, that our current elders have them as well. And then the other part is that this organization and its mission really fit in with my own personal mission statement, and that's to ensure that resources are available and accessible to all members of the community so that they can attain and maintain optimal health and have the best quality of life as possible. And this statement applies particularly to those most vulnerable members of our community, and unfortunately our seniors often fall into that. So I want to serve and lead in a way that helps ensure that our elders remain healthy and remain empowered. Because if they are, then our communities remain healthy and empowered. So I say this because I was recently given a book entitled Grandmother's Counsel of the World. Anybody ever seen that book? Really a good book. And I was actually given the book before I ever knew about this opportunity. Sometimes the universe has a way of providing what you need when you need it. And it was from a dear friend, and we were just talking, and we were always exchanging books on lots of different things. And she said, "Here, you need to read this book." So yeah, put it on the table and sat there for a while. So I finally picked it up again before I knew about this opportunity. I started reading it. And then when I heard about the opportunity, I said, "Oh, I'd like to finish this book." But it's a book about a council of 13 grandmothers, all from indigenous populations around the world, from Native American populations to the Maori to Native people in Scandinavia, who came together all to talk about how they're going to save the planet. And how they talk about it comes back to the terms that I was asked to talk about today. They're talking about it in terms of volatility and uncertainty and complexity and ambiguity. Now, they didn't use those words exactly, but they were referring to things like poverty and hunger and violence and the loss of spiritual grounding. And one of the things that I am passionate about is trying to get us back to a society where we revere our elders in that way for their wisdom and for their knowledge and for their tenacity. So I'd like to be part of an organization that can do that. And I think Senior Services is approaching being able to do that. And I'd be really honored to be able to lead this organization into the future to perpetuate that. So thank you very much. Questions? Comments? Concerns? Yes?
So what do you see as the role of the board in your 4Ds?
Oh, I would have the board actually do that same thing. I'd have the board interview each other, find out what it is that they are bringing, why they're here, how they see the destiny, how they dream, all of that. Yeah, I'd absolutely have the board do the same thing. Yes?
You didn't talk much about the people who are actually the service recipients. Do you have any thoughts of, you talked about a little bit about you had some, in your professional life you've worked with older adults. Can you talk a little bit about the people who are the recipients and how they all fit into this great scheme, shall we call it?
How they fit into the...
How, you know, their role and their place. And
Sure. Well, one of the things that we need to find out is what do our recipients of our services need? Again, that's part of staying relevant. So the only way you're going to find that out is to talk to people. And I don't know if you have participants that sit on any boards or committees or how often you interact, but I always think that that's a really great thing to do because we're here because of them. And I wouldn't presume to just sit up in an office with a group of senior leaders and go, well, you know, I think that'd probably be a good idea. Have we asked anybody if they want that? Well, no. And that's where, again, we've done that at the Y. We assumed that there were services people wanted. We hadn't asked them, and the answer was no. And so we spent a lot of time and energy and money trying to do something that people didn't want. So they're an integral part of keeping an organization relevant.
I'd like to touch on a question a colleague asked a previous question about merit raises and compensation and agency turnover, and what are your thoughts on that? And we have a pretty good turnover rate. I've been here for over 10 years and seen a lot of people come and go. We've lost some great people. We haven't had any compensation really in nearly a decade, and maybe at least a half a decade. What are your thoughts on merit raises and paying the people what they're worth to keep them here?
That actually came up in my session upstairs as well. You know, like any nonprofit, there's never enough money, there's never enough resources. The nonprofit world is notorious for paying people what's under market, and we unfortunately lose people because of that. I would like to take a look at some of those revenue-generating opportunities, bringing in more resources, making some efficiencies so that we absolutely can approach paying people what they're worth. It's always a tough juggle. Can never promise that we're going to pay people more. I really wish that we could, but that's just not a reality. I want to make people feel valued, so I look at opportunities to do that, to compensate people in other ways other than money. Making sure people feel like that they are valued and they're supported and that they're getting some professional development opportunities. It doesn't help you pay the rent, that is true.
That's my point.
Yeah, it does not help you pay the rent, absolutely not. But that is one of those realities that we have to live with, but one that we work on. If we can get more fee-based programs, generate revenue in some other kinds of ways, just keep our coffers up so that we can continue to serve our people and pay people better, that would be ideal. But it's tough, and it will take a team of people to work on it. But I'm absolutely aware of that reality, and will do what I can to make some change there and make some improvements there, because if you don't keep good people, then, as I've said before, you're not going to have the organization that you want.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi. Could you speak a little bit about how you work with your current board of directors and what you see the role of the board and the role of the COO in the organization?
Sure. So in my current role, I have a board of managers. So the way the YMCA is structured is that there is a board of directors that is over our whole association, so all of our 13 branches, and they have fiduciary responsibility. My direct responsibility right now is with a board of managers that does not have direct fiduciary responsibility. I don't report to them directly. They are more of a board of advisors and advocates, and they play a critical role in program monitoring and our fundraising efforts. Now, that being said, I have sat on several different boards of directors, and they are critical in the success of the organization. There has to be a great relationship between the board of directors and and all of the executive team, not just the CEO and the COO, but all of the executive team, all of the senior leaders. You need them for support, you need them for fundraising, you need them for advocacy and advising. They're often your ears and eyes out in the community. So they're a critical piece of any nonprofit organization. And they're resources to you. Did it answer? Yes.
Following up with that, can you talk a little bit about how you would go about raising the capacity of the organization from a fund development standpoint?
Absolutely. That's, again, one of those tough ones for any nonprofit. The philanthropic world has changed, so talk about ambiguity, has changed a lot in recent years, and it really has to be a multi-pronged approach. Oftentimes, there are organizations that they had one big fundraiser a year, and that was doing it, and that's all they needed to do. But that, I don't know of any organization where that's really working anymore. So you want to make sure that if you're going to use resources to do big events, that you're going to have a return on that investment. And then you want to look at what are the other ways that you're going to get people engaged philanthropically in your organization. Oftentimes that means developing partnerships with other organizations, foundations, corporations that you might not have thought of. You also want to make sure that you continue to nurture relationships with those individual donors. You want to look at new ways to reach out to new individual donors. There are a lot of younger people who are not sort of your traditional donors that have means and capacity to give. And we need to figure out, well, how do we reach them? How do we communicate with them? Using social media is a way. I think most organizations are now just dabbling into how are we raising money using our technology. So really, again, staying relevant and using a multi-pronged approach. Yes?
Do you see senior services as being a big player in policy change?
Absolutely, absolutely. There are national and state agencies that are already advocates in the world of senior services. So we need to be at the table. We need to be out there so people know to invite us to the table, and to invite us to the table first, because again, we're serving the people that policies are affecting. And so we want to make sure that policies are being made or changed that are going to support us in our work and that are ultimately going to support the people that we're serving. Yes?
What do you see your life being like when you're 60, 70, and 80? Your personal life?
60, 70, and 80. Wow, that's a really good question. Nobody's ever asking that before. I expect that I'll still be active. I intend to still be powerlifting. That's something that, all joking aside, I'm the Washington State Chair for USA Powerlifting, and Washington has had one of the largest growths in powerlifting participation, and a lot of that has actually come from our masters, which are over 40. I just put on a meet at the YMCA that my oldest participant was 76, and I think I had 4 people over 70 in that meet. So I intend to still be active. I certainly intend to still be working, hopefully here. And so at 70, I might start thinking about retirement. I can't actually see myself sitting around doing nothing, but I would absolutely be volunteering, love to travel, would be doing a lot of that, and probably just carry that into my 80s, 90s. I have longevity in my family. My grandfather died 4 years ago, and he was 103.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I figured, I'm just halfway there. I didn't really make plans out that far. Just give me Blake who said if I know I was going to live this long, I would take better care of myself. Yes.
Given that there are so many worthwhile organizations and causes, how will you choose to partner with some?
That's also a good question. We want to make sure we're partnering with people whose mission and values align with our own. That's the first thing that you want to look at. Oftentimes there are organizations out there that might be doing the same thing that you're doing, but their mission and their values, particularly their values, might not align with ours. So you want to take a look at that. Yes?
Would you just expand on your view of integrity and how you implement that in the community and your staff? And if you want the staff to assimilate that concept, how you go about doing it?
Sure. The first part of integrity for me is being true to myself and what I do, believing in what I'm doing and being authentic in what I'm doing and what I'm saying, following through, holding myself accountable, and building trust that way. I like to model that. So I was saying upstairs that I come into an organization and I'm going to assume that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. So I'm going to have trust in people, and I'm right off the bat. I will always be respectful of people, but I'm going to have to trust in people right off the bat. I say that I grade people as if it was gymnastics. So you start out with a 10 plus your degree of difficulty, and then you have to mess up to get points taken away. So you don't have to build up the points. Everybody starts out with a 10. Plus your degree of difficulty. And so that's kind of the way I look at people. So I try to model behavior that I want to see. So I'll do what I say I'm going to do. I am pretty much who you see. I'm not hiding anything. Kind of what you see is what you get. And just the example that I used from when I was in the health department. And I'll give people some time to trust me. I'm not just going to come in and say, well, I'm just trustworthy, so you should just trust me. I'm just telling you that, so just do it. I know people are people, and they have to learn to trust. So modeling that behavior is the best way I know how to instill that. and people, and setting up the expectations. You know, I definitely will tell people the type of environment that I want to build and be intentional about that, and hope that that is something that feels good to them and that they want to be a part of.
Any more questions?
Thank you very much.